I now give the floor to Ms. Edem Wosornu.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to Special Envoy Grunberg for his update. I can only echo and reiterate his call for de-escalation in Yemen and for the parties to recommit to the path of stability and peace. Further, also allow me to wish the people of Yemen and everyone celebrating Ramadan Mubarak. Mr. President, positive progress observed since the UN brokered truce in April 2022 is at risk of unraveling. Levels of food insecurity and malnutrition have surged in recent months, posing a real and increasing threat to the lives and well-being of millions of people, particularly women and children. Recent assessments by UNICEF and the World Food Programme showed an 11% increase in food insecurity since November last year, the highest levels for 16 months in Houthi-controlled areas, and that nearly half of all children under the age of 5 are experiencing moderate to severe stunting, a 4 percentage point increase compared to 2022, and more than double the global stunting prevalence. More than half of the families surveyed reported inadequate food consumption levels. The causes are familiar: conflict, a protracted economic crisis, and increasingly severe funding shortfalls, which are significantly impacting humanitarian assistance. In government-controlled areas, the number of people receiving aid and the size of food rations have had to be reduced. As we previously told the Council, the World Food Programme paused general food assistance in Houthi-controlled areas in November, while it continued discussions with the Houthi de facto authorities on who to prioritize for assistance. Following an allocation by the Emergency Relief Coordinator of $7 million from the Central Emergency Response Fund to the World Food Programme, an agreement on commencing a pilot retargeting exercise in Houthi-controlled areas has been reached. Based on the success of this pilot and subject to availability of funding, a broader resumption of food distributions will take place. As a result, 9.5 million people who have not received assistance since November 2023 could be reached. Over the past 5 months, WFP's overall requirement is $230 million to cover 3 food distribution cycles for the most vulnerable families in Houthi-controlled areas. We urge donors to step in with this much-needed immediate funding. Mr. President, for most people in Yemen, food insecurity is an issue of affordability, not accessibility. As people in Yemen very clearly told me when I visited governorates of Aden, Sana'a, and Amran last week, they want sustainable solutions to the causes of their humanitarian needs and the opportunity to define for themselves how to rebuild their futures. In Ash-Sha'ab displacement site in Aden, I spoke with Sadia, with Juma'a, with Saada, with Sumaya, and Shahra, mothers, breadwinners, and change makers in their communities. They shared with me their hopes to start businesses in Bahur, which is perfume and incense making, to take control of their lives for themselves and their families. As Special Envoy Grunberg said, as we celebrate International Women's Day this month, I am awed by their drive, their determination, and their resilience. These sustainable solutions we discussed go far beyond what humanitarians can be expected to provide. It is now more important than ever that the international community gets behind the UN's development framework for Yemen to enable the people of Yemen to break the cycle of dependence on external assistance and help them build a robust, self-reliant, and sustainable economy, just like the women I met mentioned to me. Livelihoods and job creation are the central pillars of this development framework, prioritizing support for groups at the highest risk of being left behind, including women and girls. Mr. President, distinguished delegate members of the Council, rising regional tensions, as mentioned, and the escalating situation in the Red Sea are further factors threatening the modest economic improvements and humanitarian progress made following the UN brokered truce in April 2022 and the subsequent cessation of hostilities. Attacks against vessels such as Ruby Ma, as the Special Envoy has said, could have direct and indirect impacts on the livelihoods of thousands of people in coastal communities that rely on fishing for survival. This incident illustrates the substantial risks posed by growing escalation in and around Yemen. We have also received a number of unverified reports of civilian casualties stemming from Houthi attacks on vessels, as well as airstrikes in Yemen. We again reiterate the United Nations Secretary General's call for full compliance with Security Council Resolution 2722. We urge all parties, all concerned parties, to comply with international law and refrain from actions that could exacerbate the situation. Mr. President, I also want to reiterate the importance of full humanitarian access to people in need in Yemen. Following several cancellations by the Houthi de facto authorities, we welcome the resumption of flights to Marib. We continue to advocate for the lifting of bureaucratic impediments and restrictions on staff movements, particularly the movement of Yemeni female staff throughout the country. Mr. President, the people of Yemen can ill afford to see the progress made since the UN brokered truce ebb away, nor can they afford the disaster and deprivations that could come with a further escalation in the conflict. I appeal to you as members of the Council to do everything you can to support de-escalation and peace efforts for the people of Yemen, including, as mentioned by Special Envoy Grunberg, women-led initiatives. I also ask you to continue using all diplomatic means to support and facilitate a principled humanitarian response in Yemen and to maintain unity for all those working tirelessly to serve those in need despite the dangers. Lastly, we appeal to donors to provide the urgent financial support required to tackle food insecurity and other pressing humanitarian needs, as well as livelihood support. This remains a lifeline for the people of Yemen, and we depend on the timeliness of this funding. Thank you.